Welcome to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio. It's the radio news magazine that we put together here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy to introduce you to ideas, concepts that some may be percolating in your head, and these are the folks that are digging in at the substantive core of the things going on today, and not necessarily the ones that grab the headlines, which, let's face it, these folks are just out there trying to get the most click-throughs, and it's becoming fairly obvious sometimes that they miss the real stories. I've been told numerous occasions that when I refer to the nanny state, that I'm just a conspiracy theorist, hair on fire, Joe, that could never happen, such as the Western Albemarle High School smartphone app that allows high school students as young as 16 to get their classmates in trouble anonymously by just reporting them to the authorities, or the most amazing, the Talk to Me VA text line that the governor has set up so that you can circumvent your family and talk to unnamed government officials about your sex life, because that's not going to turn out badly. Joining us from the Family Foundation, Director of Government Relations there, Todd Gathje, is on with us. Todd, welcome back to the program, and thank you again for everything you do. You've written just effusively on the dangers of this text hotline the governor has set up.
Yeah, well, thank you, Joe, for having us on, and appreciate all the work that you're doing through your radio station. This is a very troubling troubling may be an understatement, just how this program undermines parental authority and really endangers teenagers as young as 13, maybe even younger than that, and puts them in a very precarious situation in which they are texting with complete strangers anonymously about very intimate details of their lives.
Well, and it flies in the face. Ironically, here's a political party that kneels and genuflects at the altar of Roe versus Wade, which was argued and won over based on the idea that the government has no right to insert itself in between a doctor and their patient. Well, doesn't this do the same thing? Doesn't this text line insert the government in many cases in situations where medical treatment should be getting sought and not governmental support?
Oh, absolutely right. I mean, here in Virginia, we have a law that says that parents have a fundamental right to direct the education and health of their children. They are the primary source for helping them make these decisions and providing the care that they need. And that means going to a doctor. That means making sure they have proper health care, seeking advice from physicians, from their primary care doctors. And this undermines that. It puts someone in between the parent and the child and says, hey, they have some type of authority and ability to answer these questions for you. You don't need to go to your parents. You don't need to go to your doctor. Come to this so-called health professional through this Birds and Bees program, and they're going to answer deep, questions related. I mean, it's pretty shocking, the things that they're getting involved in: relationships, sex, sexuality, STDs. All of these things are meant for parents and doctors, their doctors, to address.
Is it frightening that here's a man who, whether or not it's an over-exaggeration of what his discussion was on the Washington, D.C. radio station when he talked about having discussions with parents? I believe he thought he was talking about, children that might have developmental disabilities when that wasn't necessarily the bill he was asked about, but his ability to stay connected to the conversation is sometimes challenging as well. But here's a pediatrician who sat there talking about, just cavalierly talking about killing babies, and you're going to ask him to give advice to teenagers about sexuality?
Yeah. I think it's also important to look at the fact of who they've contracted with, which is the American Sexual Health Association. And this organization targets teens specifically to provide them these information in these areas. And they're using, here's the interesting part, is they're using Title V funding, federal funding for this program, which is really meant for abstinence teaching. Yeah. So they're using this to sort of cultivate a group of teens who are looking at ways to learn more about these topics and in addition, give them access to abortion, essentially. I mean, they have a program called Youth Abortion Support Collective, which is designed to make abortion services available in the youth in certain areas. When we asked where this program was being targeted, because there's a lot of unknowns related to this program, we found out that they are targeting communities in which there's a high teenage pregnancy rate. So why is an organization that is actively trying to broaden abortion services for the youth targeting those areas in which they have high teenage pregnancy rates? It's just it's beyond the pale, and completely absurd that they would use this program to target those teens to undermine parental authority.
And Todd, it's extra governmental. I mean, this was never, you can go all the way back to 1619, whether you read the New York Times or not, and find anything in the government structure of the Commonwealth or the country writ large that has any instance where we should be micromanaging people's personal lives like this. What gives the governor the idea that he has a right to do it? Or is it the Lee Carters and the social justice warriors that swept into the General Assembly 2 years ago?
That's a good question, because I do think it is part of a larger worldview or larger philosophy that's at play here. I think that you have those that are in the General Assembly and the governor who really thinks that the government has to make these decisions. Senator Stanley on the floor, when they were debating a budget amendment to try and stop this program, made some pretty just stark comments. Hey, stay out of my life. Let me and my wife make these, provide this type of education. And yes, there are some parents who may abdicate this, who maybe fall short of this. We don't disagree with that. Some parents, this is not an easy topic to have with your children. However, that does not give the government the right to just step in and start making blanket policies really under the cover of dark. I mean, this program has been in play maybe since January, February. It was kind of low to the ground, and then all of a sudden we found out about it in September, thanks to what Senator Newman reported in social media. So they really secretly tried to promote this program, and I think they're finding out now that everybody, the Virginia citizens, parents are finding out about this program. I think they're really wishing that they hadn't started this, because there is a complete pushback. We're seeing a lot of mobilization among parents and Virginia citizens, and connecting this to just more of what you're talking about, more government overreach.
Many moons ago, I made the point to some controversy that if you wait till you're at the door of Planned Parenthood to fight abortion, you've kind of missed 3/4 of the battle, and we should be doing as much as possible. You talk about abstinence education, programs like Worth Your Weight, which little by little was taken out of schools because people were mischaracterizing it as, the violation of church and state.
Yeah. That's what is really troubling about this program, this so-called Birds and Bees program, is that it connects these young kids to what is so-called it's anonymous texting back and forth with a professional healthcare provider. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their credentials are. We don't know who they're associated with. We don't know their philosophy. All we know is just that, hey, they're just qualified according to this Birds and Bees program. And that creates such a huge danger for our children, because we tell them, hey, don't text strangers. Beware of giving out your phone number. We don't know what kinds of images might be shared through this texting. So this is a really dangerous program, and I hope that parents are aware of that, and it brings more awareness to just as Senator Stanley said on the floor the other day, the Internet can be very helpful. I mean, we can get so much information, and we can build our knowledge, but the Internet can be very dangerous at the same time, and it gives people an opportunity to come right into their phone, right into their homes, especially teenagers, and groom them. It's ideal for sexual predators. Senator Bill DeSteph used his Navy experience in working with child predators to catch child predators, and explain how, organization like ASHA is perfect for child predators, because they would love to have a job to be able to text with them anonymously about these very sensitive topics. It is so dangerous to our kids, and we've been pushing through a petition to see if we can encourage the governor, stop this program. Let's rethink this, because this is being done outside of the family life education. So in Virginia, we have sex education that is provided at the local levels, and it's a curriculum that is meant for, it's not to be done outside of, in other areas like biology or literature. It gives you one place where you can go and have these conversations. It gives parents the opportunity to opt out if they feel confident they can have these conversations with their children much better than a teacher or a caseworker who may come in to talk about these topics. This Birds and Bees talk line is being done outside of that family life education curriculum. That is something that legislators really need to find out, how and why is that happening.
Todd Gathje is on with us. He's the Director of Government Relations at the Family Foundation this week. And Todd, you talk about a lot of the very real concerns. There are case after case, at least once a month, of some esteemed figure in the community, whether it be a high school teacher. We have University of Virginia professors who get caught up in these child pornography stings where the government is out there and catching people who probably up until that point would have qualified as an expert for this text line to discuss sexuality. Beyond that, we talk about security of these children's information. How many of these government agencies report, oh, well, we had a minor hack and we only lost 50% of the data? And that's 50% of our teenage kids' text and sexual information out there on the dark web. I mean, this is just a Pandora's box of horrible ideas going around. Who can we go to? Obviously, the Republicans don't have a majority. Please tell me there's a handful of Democrats that realize how horrible this is, or are they just so bought and paid for by the Democratic Party machine these days that there's no common sense and there's no talking to them?
That's a great question, Joe, and I wish I had a positive response, but based on what happened this special session, so after this whole teen sex text line became widely known in Virginia, the Delegate Kathy Byron in the House introduced a budget amendment during this special session that we're currently in to stop the funding for this program. The House, on a party line vote, defeated that budget amendment, and in fact she was only given 2 minutes to discuss or propose her budget amendment. It was quickly laid on the table, passed by indefinitely, and so it was defeated. On the Senate side, we were able to actually get some good debate, and we have a blog out, a piece that we've written that provides you a link to the video and exactly where you can go to watch that debate. A budget amendment was introduced by Senator Steve Newman, and this budget amendment would have essentially prevented any federal funding, non-general funds, Title V funding from being able to pay for these types of contracts, essentially targeting this program. And he gave a great explanation for it. And what we saw was a debate in which you have common sense Republicans stand up and say, in the case of Senator Stanley, hey, stay out of my life, government. Let me and my wife make these decisions. Let us provide this education. Or a Bill DeSteph who said, hey, this is putting our kids in a very dangerous position. Senator Donovan also stood up and talked about how they're contracting with an organization that hasn't been vetted. They don't know anything about them. They don't know their funding. They don't know who they are. And then you have on the opposite side those that stood up and defended the program. Now there were some Democrats who would say, "Hey, listen, we don't know a lot about this program. We're hearing your side, but let's put this off until next session. Let's wait and let's let a committee look at this." It was Senator Boysko who actually stood up and said, "Hey, we're kind of acting like we're lighting our hair on fire." Really? We're encouraging our teenagers to have a conversation with someone, with a stranger, about the most intimate aspects of their life without their parents knowing and in place of their parents.
Mm-hmm.
How dare that comment be made? I mean, we should have every right to stand up and say, this is not a good program. This is violating our rights. But I think that the one comment that really got us was Adam Eban, Senator Adam Eban, who stood up and wanted to provide some statistics, and maybe he unknowingly did this. I'll give him that credit, but he said that he used statistics to say that, hey, most sexual abuse actually happens in the home with parents, families, or friends. So essentially arguing that, hey, it's okay to go talk to strangers, but your parents are not safe. That kind of tells you, that puts things into a perspective here of what we're really up against.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Senator Cosgrove was right. If we didn't address this in the special session, that means that this program is going to be in place until at least July 1st of 2021, because anything that the General Assembly does in the next session is not going to be able to take effect until July 1. Mm-hmm. So at the very earliest, the only way, this would have been a great opportunity for the General Assembly to put a pause on the program and then say, let's have a discussion in session and let's vet this organization. Let's look at the program. Let's look at what they're doing, and then we can go from there. But that's not what happened. They shut it down, and two great efforts to at least defund the program and put a pause on it were defeated during special session on a party line vote.
Well, and Todd, moreover than that, this strikes me as yet another one of those programs that if you dare, once it's in place, try to talk about taking it down. Say the immediate, knee-jerk reaction from the funding addicts is that you're for, in the pocket of big business or allowing for pollution against, common sense and clean water, and your teenagers are being put at risk, and you can't even have an honest debate with them about it.
Yeah, it does. That script does get flipped really quick, doesn't it? In this situation, I think what we have on our side in terms of our argument is we have, I think, a population of Virginia citizens and parents who are starting to come to the realization that the Virginia that they used to know is not that same Virginia, that they are seeing policies, whether it's new transgender policies that is going to be imposed on their children in schools now, whether it's, if we're looking at abortion, and how this year they stripped away, you could argue 50 years of pro-life achievements, beginning with, back in 1975 when they passed the law that says a physician only should be performing abortions, to taking away health and safety standards, mm-hmm. making sure that they're in a safe environment if they choose this make this unfortunate decision to go through with an abortion, potentially putting the mother's health at risk. I think people are starting to really wake up. But I'm gonna say this. I'll kind of make not a prediction, but you can really see how things are going in Virginia, and there's going to be more of an effort to really undermine parental authority in Virginia. And I think everyone here listening and every Virginian needs to be cautious of and aware of what's going to happen as we start to move forward, because this whole sexualization of our children is just going to continue to get worse and worse. And we need to make sure that, we're preparing our children for it. We're having those important conversations, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. that we are involved in our community, our churches, and that we're actively engaged in the public square. Having those conversations with our legislators, with people at the local level, the school boards, the board of supervisors. Now is the time for everyone to really stand up and push back on these policies.
Well, and you make the most important point. These school boards are allowing, and I was talking to a friend who's, always been a lifelong liberal Democrat. He felt, he was a woke, modern metrosexual, blah, 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 blah. And then his kid started to do online school this year. And the first day of class, the teacher spent half the morning saying, let's go through what you want to be identified as, what your pronoun of choice is. These are third graders, Todd. And this woke liberal said, I was screaming, pulling his hair out, saying this is just, I don't want my third grader even pushed into the point of discussing this. He's a third grader. He's just, don't ask him what your pronoun of choice is and what gender do you identify as. But that's the agenda that our school boards have been abdicated by conservative-minded people. We'll get 7 people running for a congressional seat, and I can't scrape together one conservative to run for the school board. Todd, help me out.
Yeah, that is such a great point because so much happens at the local level, and school boards play a really important role. I mean, we really encourage people that we meet that seem to have an interest and a calling to consider running for a school board or a local board of supervisors seat because, just because the state may pass these policies doesn't mean, for example, a locality like maybe Amherst or Stafford or wherever has to pass these anti-harassment policies that, if a teacher uses the wrong pronoun like Peter Vlaming did in West Point, that all of a sudden that you are going to lose your job, that you are somehow compelled to speak in a certain way. I think Loudoun County is facing that as well. They're facing some equity policies that are going to compel teachers to use certain speech. And we know that that's unconstitutional. But if we can put people on these school boards to really pump the brakes and to pause and say, look, we need a rational view of these policies because what's happening is really just unconstitutional. It flies in the face of liberty and freedom as we know it. And these roles, these positions, if we can get people of faith and get people who have good conservative values and just are good, rational people who can think through this and want to advocate on the part of parents into these roles of school boards and board of supervisors, we can really see some changes at the local level.
And a lot quicker than you'd think. Todd, thank you so much for visiting us. And anyone who wants to help out with this, it is familyfoundation.org. We'll post this whole chat online on our YouTube channel, Freedom and Prosperity Radio there. Todd Gathje, the Director of Government Relations at the Family Foundation. I wish a position like yours wasn't necessary because the family should be sanctified, separate from the government, but they keep trying. So God bless you for everything you do there, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Coming up next, Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, on the Jeanette Geary case and the unionization of Virginia. Coming up next on Freedom and Prosperity Radio.